Don't you dare cook with those dirty hands. Upon seeing the grime on my hands from my factory job that just wouldn't wash off, my son Jack labeled it as dirty. I prepared the meals with oversized plastic gloves on, but they were so slippery I accidentally cut my finger. I had always intended to work tirelessly for my children. However, my eldest son Jack was ashamed of me. My name is Emily. After getting divorced in my 30s, I leveraged my hairdressing qualifications and juggled part-time jobs at a barbershop and a factory to raise my 2 sons. I'm 55 years old now. The cause of the divorce was my ex-husband's terrible drinking habits. Despite his high education and income, he became violent when drunk, leaving me in constant fear that he might harm our young sons. So, I made the bold decision to leave home with my 2 boys. Dirty hands, huh? Could dirty hands you at least take care of them? My eldest son Jack has a penchant for cleanliness and is a bit of a germaphobe. He's good at studies and graduated from a pretty well-known university. I washed them too much, they get chapped. I don't have the time to care for them, I said. Jack glanced at me as I said this and, with a huff of contempt, left the room. Mom works hard with her hands at the barbershop and at the factory. You deal with machine oil. My younger son Sam disliked studying, but he learned programming on his own. Due to his weak physique, he works as a home-based engineer. We have managed to live close together in a small apartment, but now Jack has decided to become independent. He wanted to live alone right after graduating, but I was barely able to afford his tuition, let alone support his independence. Are you kidding me? Working from dawn till dusk, and this is all you've got? Are you secretly using the money you earn for yourself? He'd say this bluntly to me, wearing fraying sweatshirts, worn-out jeans, and sneakers with worn-out heels. My eldest son Jack often came at me harshly. Maybe we just didn't get along. My alcoholic ex-husband was fond of Jack when he wasn't drinking, so maybe Jack resented me for pulling them apart. I've worried a lot about whether my not being able to be by his side much during his sensitive years, being a single parent and working all the time, also affected him. In the end, Jack commuted from home for a while after graduating from the university. When he found out I had managed to set aside some money, he said, "Having parents who don't know how to make money efficiently is a struggle." He then quickly took the money I offered and left without even telling me where he was moving to. Ever since Jack found out that his father, whom I had separated from, had a high education and high income, he criticized me for separating from my husband, saying, even if he was just a bit of a drunk, if I had stayed with the one who had a lot of money, I might have had better treatment. Despite being such a tough character, the independence of my firstborn, for whom I had suffered, was both joyful and lonely. I shed some tears and went to sleep that day. Even after that, whenever he was short on money, he would come home, take the money I had earned and saved, and although my younger son Sam tried to stop him physically, he would end up losing to his physical strength and letting him take it, making it hard for me to save money for my old age. One day, I got a message from Jack saying he was getting married. "I've arranged for a meeting with the family. Make sure you don't embarrass me. Make sure your clothes in here are in order before you come," he warned me. But I was very happy. If he had someone important in his life, Jack might change. I thought he would naturally learn about love, something I couldn't teach him, from the woman who was to become his wife. However, there was no context for a while. I anxiously waited for the schedule for the meeting, but I also had work, so I went to my part-time job at the factory as usual. During work, my cell phone rang, and as I was waiting for a message from Jack, I stopped my hand and answered the call. The voice saying hello was Jack's. When I asked him about the date for the meet and greet with the in-laws, he said, "No, her parents are business people, likely have a keen eye for people. They're different from our family, so you don't have to come." Then, without waiting for my reply, he hung up the phone. That's when I realized how much happier I was about Jack's marriage than I thought. Ever since he left home, I was always worried about whether he was doing well or if he had caught a cold. Knowing that he'd have someone by his side when he got married was truly comforting. "I wanted to meet the woman who loves my firstborn son, to ask her to take care of him," I said. But I was disappointed when he said not to come. My younger son Sam heard this and said, "What the heck? I just got a new suit for nothing, man. New suit." Jack is so selfish. But a few days later, as I was about to head home after work, my phone starts ringing. It was Jack, so I answered, and he said, "Her parents insist on meeting you. Come over now. Don't keep them waiting." Suddenly, I was in a rush. Should I risk being disrespectful by showing up in my dirty work clothes, or would it be more disrespectful to keep them waiting while I change? I knew I'd be quite late if I went home to freshen up, so I reluctantly decided to go. As I was on the way, I bought some drugstore makeup, did a quick touch-up, dusted off my clothes, and headed for the meet and greet at the restaurant. It turned out to be a high-end restaurant, and I felt intimidated. But there was nothing I could do at this point. I mustered up my courage, approached the table, and stammered, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. I'm Jack's mother, Emily. Thank you for this opportunity." When the in-laws and Jack's fiancé stood up to greet me, they began to guide me to my seat, but Jack interrupted. "My mom has all sorts of allergies, so she can't eat at unfamiliar places. Today is really just for greetings." I don't have any allergies, but playing along and bowing apologetically, I practically let Jack chase me out of the restaurant. I'm sure he must have thought my attire was disgraceful. I wanted to talk a bit more with his fiancée, but I had no choice but to return home disappointed. Sure enough, Jack called me the next day. "Why did you show up looking like that? That was embarrassing. Don't you know what a dress code is?" He scolded me harshly. Sam, who was listening to the conversation, snatched my phone and defended me. "Mom was ready with a nice dress, and you're the one who told her she didn't. I still have Sam when Sam gets married." Married. I want to be able to contribute whatever money I can, so I need to keep working hard. One day, about 2 weeks before the wedding, Jack contacted me again. I had thought our relationship was nearly severed since he said I didn't need to come to the wedding. Yet at this stage, he was still pushing more unreasonable demands onto me. "Weddings cost money? You know that, right?" "I know, but I don't have any more money to give you. Besides, if it's money for a wedding, shouldn't you have saved some yourself since you're working?" I replied, and he seemed annoyed, probably because I hit a nerve. "Are you saying you can't even afford to pay for your child's wedding? There must be some way. I'll borrow it from somewhere." He wasn't listening. I gave in and said, "Fine, I'll arrange for it. Come by the house again to collect it." After that, Jack finally seemed satisfied and hung up. A few days later, Jack came to collect the borrowed money. He took it with a smug smile, said nothing, and left. I felt a huge responsibility for having taken on so much debt, even if it was for my child. Jack's wedding wasn't the only thing on my mind. I thought if something happened to me, this debt might be passed on to Sam. I knew I needed to work hard to repay it as soon as possible. Then one day, a man who said he was a customer came to the factory where I worked. I was called by a coworker to the office, and there a surprising person was waiting for me. Days passed, and the day of Jack's wedding arrived. I had been told not to come, so I had no intention of going, but I worked as usual, praying for my son's happiness in my heart. Then I was called from the office. Jack was on the phone, seemingly in the middle of the wedding. I picked up the phone and asked what was going on, and in a panicked tone he said, "Mom, come to the wedding now." I was surprised and asked, what on earth happened? He just said to hurry up and bring Sam too, so I quickly got ready and headed to the wedding venue. When I arrived at the venue, a staff member was waiting, and I was quickly escorted to the hall. When I opened the door that was pointed out to me, I was suddenly in the spotlight and couldn't make out my surroundings. Then the father of Jack's bride announced, "This is Jack's mother. Please welcome her with applause." I became the center of attention, feeling both embarrassed and happy. While bowing to the people around me, I took my seat as guided, looking halfway up the stage. I could see Jack, my older son, with his arms crossed, looking away, dressed in a new suit. It appeared as if he was embarrassed or possibly angered by his mother being introduced in front of so many people. Then there was my younger son, Sam, beside him, saying, "Don't mind Jack, let's have fun. We've been invited by the bride's father himself, that's right." The man who had come to visit the factory before the wedding was the father of Jack's bride. When the bride's father had asked Jack why his mother wouldn't be attending the wedding, Jack had been vague in his reply, so the bride's father had taken the trouble to visit the factory. Even Jack couldn't defy the bride's father. Meanwhile, Sam was starting to dig into the feast before him, exclaiming how delicious they all looked. Thanks to Sam's cheerful and kind demeanor, I could truly appreciate the joy of witnessing my son's special moment in such a grand setting. After that, the wedding reception progressed in a friendly manner, reaching its climax and ending without a hitch. When we finally left the venue, I felt relieved as I managed to convey my blessings to both Jack and his bride. Taking a breather, I went to express my gratitude for the day to the bride's parents. As I peered into the family waiting room, that's when it happened. "Don't get too comfortable. You're only here because your father-in-law felt sorry for you," I heard someone say. Turning around, I saw Jack, who continued, "This isn't a place for a factory worker who's down on her luck." Suddenly, behind Jack, the bride's father, who had been absent until now, said, "Jack, are you still talking to your mother like that?" Caught off guard, Jack turned around, making a surprised face before freezing in place. "Do you understand how much financial hardship you cause your mother? It's not just tuition fees, but moving costs when you left home, wedding expenses, and even the money you've taken from your mother to supplement your irresponsible lifestyle." The father of the bride addressed Jack. Jack couldn't respond to this. He just looked down, biting his lip. Then Sam, who was beside me, chimed in. "You had Mom take out a payday loan for the wedding expenses, didn't you? $10 million wouldn't have been enough, right, Jack?" "No offense, but I did a little research about you," the bride's father said as he received a small paper bag from his wife standing nearby, then offered it to me. I accepted it, not knowing what was inside. "I am returning this large sum of money we received from you for the wedding to your mother. And in return, I want you to work at our daycare center and pay the wedding expenses from your salary," he told Jack. "Take it back." Jack lifted his face and looked up at his bride's father. The bride's father's business was a private daycare center, but when you say work, I don't have any qualifications to be a child care worker, and I've never worked with small children. "Do you mean helping with the business as a manager?" Jack asked, sounding uncertain. Then, with a calm look on his face, the bride's father said, "A manager? Absolutely not. The people who entrust their children to us are hardworking mothers who do it for their families." With a stern look, he continued, "A guy like you who doesn't understand the struggles of a mother and only causes trouble couldn't possibly manage a daycare center. So, first of all, as the bride Tyler was thinking..." Jack stared at him with a look of utmost concern. "What you need is cleaning the dirty toilet that children used and washing cloth diapers at our nursery," he said with laughter, unable to hide a shock. Jack's eyes widened, and he lowered his gaze, clenching both his fists tightly. Seeing Jack in such a state, at first, for me, I was taken aback. The mention of the daycare center jogs my memory. "Could your father is he Mr. Helen?" I questioned, an unexpected realization dawning upon me. The bride's father clapped his hands together, saying, "My dear, you finally caught on." It dawned upon me that the bride's father was the very same daycare teacher who looked after my kids back when I had just separated from my ex-husband. I also recognized his wife, who had been a daycare teacher alongside of him.
"All right, everyone's presentations are done," Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?" "We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs. Gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted. dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.